Welcome to The Explainer. So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you're just constantly running on a financial treadmill? Like you're always chasing that next milestone, but you never actually feel secure? Well, you are definitely not alone. It's kind of this defining paradox of modern life, right? We can earn more than we ever really thought possible, yet somehow we still feel like we're falling behind. Today, we're diving into an ancient Japanese philosophy that actually seems to cure this modern financial burnout. We're going to unpack what it literally means to redefine your financial finish line, stepping completely away from that exhausting pursuit of infinite growth. As you'll see, a surprisingly subtle shift in perspective can completely change what it means to feel genuinely wealthy.
Okay, I want you to picture something for a second. Somewhere in a quiet Tokyo neighborhood, there's a woman in her 60s pouring tea into a ceramic cup she's owned for 30 years. Her apartment is incredibly modest, probably a fraction of the size most of us are used to. Her entire wardrobe fits effortlessly into a single closet. And frankly, by our traditional Western standards, her income might make a lot of us really nervous. But if you were to sit across from her, you'd feel something we so rarely encounter anymore. She genuinely feels rich. Not wealthy in the overflowing bank account sense, but rich in the way her mornings feel completely unhurried. Rich in the way absolutely nothing she owns feels unnecessary. It's this profound, deeply grounded serenity that only comes from a life completely stripped of financial anxiety. Now, contrast that quiet serenity with a reality that hits, well, a little closer to home for most of us. Have you ever gotten a raise only to watch your expenses rise right along with it? It's an incredibly exhausting phenomenon. Psychologists actually call this the hedonic treadmill. We work harder, we earn a higher salary, and almost unconsciously, we just upgrade our lifestyle to match that new income. We buy the slightly nicer car, take the slightly more expensive vacation, and suddenly, poof, that long-awaited raise gets entirely swallowed up by our new baseline. The finish line just keeps moving further and further away. And that serene peace of mind we're all actually working toward, it just gets pierced by the constant creeping pressure of lifestyle inflation. Okay, let's dive into this, because we can really look at this as two totally competing formulas. On the one hand, we have the Western equation. This is the formula we've been sold our entire lives. The idea that more income equals more freedom, which inevitably leads to happiness. But as the reality of lifestyle creep proves, if your expenses just naturally rise with your income, this equation is basically a trap. It demands infinite input. On the flip side, we have the Japanese truth. This perspective suggests that feeling rich has almost nothing to do with the absolute number of how much you earn. Instead, it has absolutely everything to do with knowing exactly how much you actually need. It completely flips the variable we're trying to solve for. And that Japanese truth is governed by a single, truly powerful word, shisoku. It literally translates to know sufficiency. It's that deep, bone-level understanding of the precise moment when you simply have enough. Now, in a modern culture that bombards us with thousands of ads a day, constantly manufacturing new desires and telling us we need to upgrade to be happy, shisoku is incredibly difficult to achieve by accident. It requires actively stepping off the treadmill. It's recognizing that sufficiency isn't about settling, and it's definitely not about giving up on ambition. Actually, it's the ultimate toolkit for curing the modern disease of always wanting more. You know, what's really fascinating about this concept is just how deep its historical roots go. There's a famous stone basin at the Ryoanji Temple in Kyoto, and carved right into it is a simple forward message: I alone know contentment. This is such a brilliant reminder. Contentment isn't an external product you can just go out and buy, and it's definitely not waiting for you at the end of your next promotion. It's a finish line you have to define on purpose, from within. Without actively defining this internal finish line, without a personal sense of Chisoku, you could literally earn $1 million a year and still feel completely broke, just because you've never taught yourself where your own internal enough line actually lives. So, how do we take this sort of abstract philosophy and turn it into an actionable habit? Well, the first step is addressing those slow leaks in our bank accounts caused by constant, low-level wanting. Over in Japan, there's a practice called danshari. It is essentially the ability to see a beautiful thing, notice your desire rise, and simply let it belong to someone else. It isn't about rigidly ignoring your wants or suppressing them unhealthily. It's about observing the desire, say, appreciating a really beautiful jacket or a sleek new piece of tech, but consciously choosing not to attach yourself to it. It's literally the superpower of appreciating something without actually needing to own it. Putting danshari into practice today brings us to a highly practical modern rule, the 72-hour rule. Look, we all know that sudden, urgent dopamine rush of wanting to buy something right this second. The next time you feel that intense impulse, whether it's for a new gadget or an online flash sale, just wait 72 hours. Wait 3 full days. If you see it on Sunday, just tell yourself you'll wait until Wednesday. By inserting this forced pause, you effectively starve that initial emotional impulse and give your rational brain a chance to catch up. It is absolutely stunning to discover how often that desperate must-have item suddenly feels completely unnecessary after just a little bit of breathing room. Now, once those slow leaks are stopped with the 72-hour rule, it requires a fundamental shift in how we look at the money that actually stays in our accounts. In the West, we're so conditioned to view unspent money as wasted potential, aren't we? If there's cash just sitting there, we get this itch to do something with it, to upgrade something. But it turns out Japanese financial culture embraces a beautiful concept for this called ma, the beauty of negative space. In your finances, ma is simply the gap between what you earn and what you spend. Instead of viewing that gap as idle money just waiting to be burned, it's incredibly powerful to reframe it as stored energy. It's power and it's peace of mind, just waiting to be deployed when it actually matters. And this brilliantly illustrates another piece of ancient wisdom, which is hara hachibu. Traditionally, this is a dietary teaching from Okinawa, Japan. It's the practice of eating until you're only 80% full. Biologically, this leaves room for digestion and completely prevents that sluggish feeling of overeating. But the real magic happens when we map this exact philosophy onto money and consumption. Think about it. Just as you don't need to stuff yourself to the absolute brim to be satisfied at a meal, you don't need to max out your budget or buy the absolute top-tier version of everything to live an incredibly fulfilling life. Which brings us directly to the 80% strategy. Honestly, this is probably the most practical part of the enough rule for your daily decision-making, especially in a culture that is so obsessed with optimization. When you're making a purchase, whether it's a car, a phone, or even a home appliance, buy the version that meets your needs, not the one that wildly exceeds them. We exhaust ourselves trying to buy the 100% maximized, top-of-the-line pro model with a dozen features we will literally never use. The 80% version, the one that simply and elegantly does exactly what you need it to do, that is your financial sweet spot. It saves money for sure, but more importantly, it saves your mental energy. Now, if that sounds slightly counterintuitive in a world that constantly tells us to never settle, well, the data actually backs this up perfectly. A Cambridge University study looked into this idea of good enough decision-making, and they found some striking results. Researchers discovered that people who practice this exact approach, who defined a functional finish line rather than trying to maximize every single choice, report significantly higher life satisfaction. They also experience substantially lower financial stress. The exhaustion of always seeking the absolute best or fearing you missed out on a slightly better deal somewhere else takes a massive psychological toll. By embracing that 80% mark, mathematically and psychologically, people are simply happier. Okay, as we piece this whole toolkit together, we arrive at one final, absolutely crucial concept, modanai. It translates roughly to a literal physical discomfort with waste. It's that uneasy, subtle feeling you get that something valuable wasn't truly honored or utilized to its full potential. When we adopt a mindset of modanai, our entire relationship with spending changes right at the root level. We move away from this modern, highly disposable culture of endless replacing, and we step back into a culture of repairing and cherishing. We actually use the things we own until they genuinely stop working, which builds a much deeper appreciation for the items that facilitate our daily lives. To put that into perspective, the macro-level impact of this mindset is just staggering. Japanese households actually spend less on consumption than almost any other G7 nation, all while maintaining a remarkably high quality of life, excellent healthcare outcomes, and high life expectancy. This is profound evidence that practicing Chisoku, Danchari, and Motanai is absolutely not about being cheap. It isn't about living a life of harsh deprivation. It is entirely about optimization. It proves that it is 100% possible to live vastly better with significantly less. It's all about finding richness in sufficiency rather than excess. So to start mapping out our own journey toward feeling rich on any income, I highly recommend grabbing a piece of paper this week and asking yourself 3 fundamental questions. Think of it as a shared intellectual exercise between us. First, how much in savings do we actually need to feel genuinely secure? Second, what size home is truly enough to live comfortably? And third, what kind of lifestyle honestly feels sufficient without worrying about any external expectations? Being incredibly honest about these answers shifts our focus completely away from the exhausting pursuit of infinite growth, because the exact moment we define that finish line, we instantly stop being owned by the endless, stressful pursuit of more. Because at the end of the day, financial stability was never really about the absolute numbers sitting in your account. It was always about the space between what you have and what you need. That gap, that is exactly where freedom lives.
Japan figured this out over centuries, and as the data shows, it remains one of the most effective ways to protect our peace of mind today. If you're ready to explore more habits and insights that make life feel effortless, make sure to subscribe and join us for the next explainer. But for now, consider this. If you finally defined your enough today, what would you do with all your newfound freedom tomorrow?